Welcome, everybody. Brian Keith Dalton is a former Mormon. He coined the term foreman for that, I understand. And
I
he's
did.
a YouTube atheist pioneer with a background in video production and graphic design and maybe music. Brian started his first web series, Mr. Deity, in 2006, less than 2 years after YouTube itself was created, and has so far accumulated over 15 million views on his channel for that series and all of his other videos. This interview will be published by the Center for Inquiry, so I want to mention right off that in 2010 that was, I think, Brian received an award for his work on Mr. Deity from the IIG, and that was the Independent Investigations Group. Now it's the IG as part of the Center for Inquiry. And that was during the 10th anniversary gala recognizing his contributions in the skeptical field. Can you tell me more about that? I couldn't find much more information about that.
That was a fun night. We had a good time. It was there at the Steve Allen Center, which I don't know if that's still around, if that's still a part of
Oh, no.
CFI West out here. It was a nice, me and a couple other people, I don't even remember who, got a nice little award, and it was just a terrific little evening. I didn't expect it. It was a bit of a surprise when they called me and told me they wanted to do it. So we had fun, and I remember someone set me up with a whole series of jokes before I went, like the person who went on before me, and I was able to just really take advantage of it. It's one of those times where, if someone hadn't said just the right thing at that right moment, I probably would have had a terrible night because I didn't have any remarks planned or anything, but it just caught my ear and my funny bone, and I went with it, and we had a lot of fun with it that night.
Very nice. So, before we talk about your YouTube work, can you tell everyone about your path out of religion from Mormon to foreman to Mr. Deity?
Sure. So I grew up Mormon. My mom was a true believer. My dad was an Irish Catholic who converted for the sake of peace in the family, but never really bought it. And I kind of knew that. I wasn't really into church um, from 12 on. I mean, I wasn't, it's just something you do when you're a kid. At 12, I was kind of on my own. My dad retired. My mom figured she'd raised me for 12 years. It was my dad's job now. They were older when I was born, 45, 47, and I had no supervision. I was a rock and roller. I started playing guitar when I was 10, and by the time I was 13, I was playing professionally in bands with guys who were a lot older than me because I got really good really quick. Um, Went through my whole drug phase from like 12 and a half to 15. It was the late 70s though, so you couldn't swing a dead cat without hitting a bag of cocaine here in LA, as they say. Um, and then got out of that, started, I knew something was missing in my life. I started looking at Eastern religions and got into that kind of thing. And then I had an experience with a girlfriend that I felt was like a real sign from God. And she started taking the missionary lessons. She was Catholic as well. And then I got into it, and I became this like uber Mormon, a fanatic. Everything I do is kind of 150%. So I jumped in and got crazy with it. Um, didn't go on a mission, but I was in the missionary training center when I got a word that I had gotten a record contract with Embryo Records, which was the biggest Mormon record company at the time. My partner and I had done a demo tape and sent it to Embryo Records, and they loved it and they wanted to do an album. And so I actually left the missionary training center, which was a terrible idea in terms of like everybody shunned me. They thought that I'd done something horrible and terrible. I had not a friend in the world except for my partner and my girlfriend and his girlfriend at the time. We did the album. The album came out. It was a big hit, and everyone did the whole, "Oh, this is so much better that you did this thing. Go on a mission. You're going to touch so many more people and all that." And I got back in good standing. Still kind of fanatical. Ended up meeting Dennis Prager of Prager University and started working with and for him. He paid for my office, which was attached to his, and I did his Ultimate Issues newsletter.
Can you go
This was
back
back
to, I wound up meeting him. Where did you have that happen?
Well, I had been listening to his show, and I'd started a graphic design company at the time. And as a joke, I sent him a thing. He had a newsletter called Ultimate Issues, and I sent him a satire of it called Trivial Issues, which he apparently loved, thought it was the funniest thing ever. And I happened to be in the office one day buying some books, and we met. And then somehow it came up that I sent him that thing, and he loved it. We met, we became friends. We were really good friends for years. We used to play racquetball 2 or 3 times a day. I was in the office every day, um, working for probably close to 2 years with him. Was at the house a lot, you know, Shabbat dinners and all of that stuff. Um, and he did kind of teach me. This was back when he was a passionate moderate, is what he would call himself. But he kind of taught me a lot of critical thinking skills and certainly a lot of writing skills. He was kind of tutoring me on writing. He was a very good writer back in the day, not so much anymore. Um, and I started getting around a lot of people with other ideas. Mormons are very insular, so they don't get out a lot. They don't get around a lot of other, particularly deeply religious people. So I was meeting a lot of very religious Jews, and he was very ecumenical. So I was meeting, priests. Had a good priest friend, Father Gregory Coiro, and pastors, and then one of my friends was that I'd met through Dennis was an atheist, and he started kind of challenging me about different parts of Mormonism. And I learned that the Smithsonian said there was no connection between the Book of Mormon and the archaeology of the Americas. And I started getting really into it and looking into it more and more. And I had a moment where I just decided I was going to put everything to the side and re-examine everything from the ground up and see what I could keep and what I couldn't.
How old
And
were
not
you at
on,
that time?
this started when I was about 25. So I got religion with a vengeance when I was 17. By the time I was 25, I was starting to look into it seriously. And over the course of the next 2 years, it just became clear to me that Mormonism was completely wacky. The irony is I became an atheist before I left Mormonism, because in my examination of things, one of the first things I started to do was just actually, you know what? Dennis had encouraged me to write a book about God. This is how this happened. He had encouraged me to write a book about God, and I started writing it. And he had taught me, you always got to know the other side. You always got to know the other side. And I realized I didn't know the other side about atheism. And I went to my local library and I checked out a book called The Atheist Debater's Handbook and read it and was shaken to my core. In fact, I called Dennis in a panic. I said, you have to like talk to me about this. I'm freaking out. I think I'm becoming an atheist. Oh yeah, I'll come. Yeah. We chatted, and after the first question I had for him, I realized he didn't really know the other side. And it was a devastating moment for me, because I remember sitting in his car. We had just left the racquetball courts, and we were chatting about it. And I realized, oh crap, I'm going to become an atheist. I'm going to be an atheist. I don't want to be an atheist. Like the atheist was the last thing in the world I wanted to
Yeah,
be.
then
I
you have to
always,
learn to like eating babies and stuff.
I
So
always, I always joke, yeah, I didn't have the right clothes. I didn't like shag carpeting. I didn't like the taste of baby.
I don't get the
Um,
shag carpeting reference.
Shag carpet. It's just I thought all atheists were communist pornographers, who were having orgies. And
Who have
you
shag
gotta have
carpet?
you gotta have the shag carpeting if you're doing the orgies. You can think that one through on your own, but a lot easier on the knees. Anyway, uh,
Okay.
so I all of a sudden I found myself an atheist, and I was still Mormon at the time. And I thought it was okay, because Mormonism doesn't have a big G God. A lot of people don't know that, but Mormon theology has no big G God. The Mormon God is not the God. He is
Oh,
a
right. Because Mormons can become gods themselves. So
yes,
therefore, our
yes,
God on earth is one of those people
yes. The
being.
Mormon God supposedly was on some earth in some universe somewhere, and progressed and learned to become, God like we can do. So I didn't initially have a problem with the atheism and Mormonism. I thought, okay, well, it's fine. But the more I learned about, all of the other stuff, the archaeology and Joseph Smith's history, and I mean, it's probably the most empirically, demonstrably false religion you could possibly imagine. Maybe Scientology.
Scientology.
There's a debate there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, because the religion is based completely on empirical claims about the Native Americans and how they lived and what they did, it's a slam dunk just to say no, it didn't happen. Sorry. Just looking at the information. And then I freaked out for about 2 years. I tried to at least reacquire my faith in God. Um, Went at it with a real agenda to reacquire my faith, and I couldn't do it. And then I just gave up, and I said, "Okay, I guess I'm going to be an atheist." And it was right about that time. So I was still a total right winger because Mormons are, that's just who they are. And I was listening a lot to Dr. Laura. And she had mentioned writing an article on false memories for this magazine called Skeptic. Now, this is before she got religion with a vengeance. She was actually on the board of Skeptic magazine,
Oh my
Michael
God, I did
Shermer's.
not know that.
Yes, a lot of people don't know that. So she had written an article on false memories. I went and bought the magazine, read her article, and then started reading the rest and realized these are my people. These are my people. And at the time, Michael was having every first Sunday of the month were lectures at Caltech. And I started going to the lectures. I met Michael. We became good friends. I actually redesigned their magazine at the time, and we've been friends ever since. So that's, God, what is it? That's coming up. That's close to 30 years now that I've known Michael and been friends with him.
Wow. So, okay, it's quite a journey.
Yeah,
And now you've
yeah.
acquired the taste for babies, apparently, because
Yes,
you stayed an
yes,
atheist.
yes,
And way
yes.
back, as I mentioned before, so let's talk about the Mr. Deity show.
Hmm.
Right when YouTube was still young, you decided to use your skills to create something. And let me read this from Wikipedia. The show began in 2006 and has had 102 episodes through May 2019. But I know that's actually out of date because I binged the entire series in preparation for talking to you.
Wow.
There's at least three, not, yeah, I'm hearing your voice in my head 24. It's
Sorry.
interesting. So the last three that I found were not on the Wikipedia list, and we'll have to do something about that. And I'm not sure if it's not missing more than that. The last one was Mr. Deity and the Deity. Is that correct?
Yes, yes,
Okay, and that
yes.
was just a month ago. So
Yeah,
you're still producing episodes, although the pace has crawled
rarely.
onto a slow crawl at this point.
Yes.
The other thing interesting about the Wikipedia article on that show is it says there are 7 seasons, but if I look at your YouTube channel, you list 6.
6. Yeah, the seasons were all about the DVDs when we started. So we would sell DVDs after each season. And then DVD sales were not happening anymore. So there was kind of no point in making a DVD. And I just let the sixth season is infinite. It's like Mr. Deity himself.
Okay.
It will just go on and on and on and on. And I
Okay.
like that it's a 6.
Of
I like
course.
that it's a 6.
Of course. And you can't end it until you have at least 666 episodes in that.
Yes, yes. And 7 would be too holy.
Yeah.
So we don't want
Yeah,
to go to
that's
a
that,
seventh
that's
season.
true.
Yeah.
All right, so Wikipedia definitely needs to be corrected about this. All right, we'll see what we can do about that. Did the pandemic have any effect on the slowing down of Mr. Deity?
No, we had already slowed down because my cast had all moved away or just not been available, and it was more about just the unavailability of the cast. Amy and I split for good in 2018, and I've just done episodes here and there since with one other friend of mine. and myself, the Mr. Deity and the Ascension is just a one-sided phone call, a la Bob Newhart.
Right. And
About
The Me Too episode had someone else who was answering the phone for Lucy, I guess.
yeah, she plays Asherah, um, who in some circles was God's wife, um, and we were gonna develop that, but um, it's one of those things that's hard to, I was so used to writing for a particular cast, and I mean, I like the episodes with her, but it just kind of, it just
Did you
seemed
ever?
like I was trying to force it a little. So I wanted to back off and see if I could find another way to do it, which is what I've kind of done with this last episode with the opening up the multiverse. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. Have you ever considered using the brilliant thing that quite by accident I think the Doctor Who people came up with?
which is,
Which is the Doctor just regenerates and it's a different actor. When the actor had to
yeah,
leave the series, it's just a different
yeah,
person, especially if these are supernatural beings. Just throwing the idea.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, if you remember in the one with Ashera, he keeps calling her acting Lucy, which
Yes.
I thought was fun because Trump had nothing but acting secretary of this, acting secretary of
Oh,
that.
I didn't catch that. Okay.
Yeah, that was the bit at the time. That's Anna Maltese. She's terrific. She's great. She's a former animator on The Simpsons, by the way. She's terrific.
So,
And I'll probably do more with her because she's so good.
so where did the series concept, going back to the beginning, where did the concept come from in the first place? Where did the name come from? How did you decide to do this?
Yeah, so everything sparked by the tsunami in 2003 or four. I think it was December 2003, and then I started. I had so one of my brother-in-law at the time was Sri Lankan, and he lost a lot of people. I mean, he knew so many people who were wiped out in the tsunami, and he was Mormon too. And in talking to him, I was just amazed at how he could still find God's hand in this whole thing with all of these people being wiped out in an instant almost. And I just started thinking, and I wrote this little thing, which turned out to be Mr. Deity and the Evil. I just wrote this little thing. It wasn't something that I had, it was just amusing for myself. Um, and I wrote it, and then I ended up writing two more. And at the time, Jimbo and I, who plays Larry on the show, we were doing a lot of video production, which is hard work. It's very physically demanding work. And we were traveling a lot and everything. And we'd had a particularly hard day. And I had been trying for 2 years. I wrote the piece with two other actors in mind, who had been in my movie. I did a movie in 2003, and they were hysterical. And I thought they'd be perfect for this. It's called Killing the Dream. I wrote and directed it. Won the Temecula International Film Festival in 2003, and we played all over, even in Europe, in the festival circuit. And we had gotten a distribution deal, but the people at IFP, the Independent Film Project, told me, don't take it, remake the movie in HD because it was made in standard definition, and just do that. And so we were trying to get money, and Jimbo finally said, why don't we let's shoot these little things that you have and see if we can do something with it. You play Mr. Deity and I'll play Larry, and let's see what we can do. We actually shot that first episode 3 times because I was so bad. I was so awful.
So
I'd never acted
no
before. I'd
acting,
never been
no acting
on
credits
screen.
before. Okay.
No, no. And Jimbo had acting stuff. He has a degree in whatever, acting or cinema, or I can't remember what he has a degree in. And we shot those in October of 2006, and we were waiting around to put it up. I was going to call it Mr. God. I wanted it to be pedestrian, so the Mr. part. And somebody had Mr. God, and I thought, let's do Mr. Deity. And I ended up liking Mr. Deity a lot more. In fact, I love the way my British friends say it, Mr. Deity. Um,
Yes, I was going to ask you about that.
yes,
First time I
yeah,
heard anyone say that was when Dawkins was on the, yes, and he
Mr.
said,
Deity. The
yes.
first time I met Richard, he said to me, I said, Richard, you're my hero. And he said, no, you're mine. It was beautiful. No, you're mine. And that beautiful accent of his. And I was like, oh my God, that's spectacular. Um, so we posted it in January. And by March, we had offers from big six media companies like Sony. And we went with Sony and their new Crackle thing for season 2, which really didn't do anything, went nowhere. We
Thing.
were going to do a third season where they wanted to get, B-list celebrities to come on. They didn't want to do it. They gave us the show back, and we started it back up on our own. But we lost so much momentum and viewers and everything. And then I made the huge mistake of doing season 4 as a sequential season. So you have to watch them. If you didn't watch the previous one, you don't know what's going on in this one. Totally screwed myself. Nobody had ever watched the show like that, nor did they want to.
Uh,
And I lost probably another good 50% of my audience
oh,
that season. So really bad mistakes
four
on
was
my part.
the prequel
The
season.
prequel season,
Yeah.
yes, which by the way was incredibly difficult to write as well because it takes place all before the Big Bang, and there's no source material. Like for all the other shows, I had source material that everyone knew and understood, and it was. I mean, I'm proud of that season. I really like that season, particularly the last episode, Mr. Deity and the Bang, which is a 12-minute piece, and I scored the whole thing, which I ended up hating myself for doing, but it was just so hard, so difficult. I'd never done a score. I've written a lot of songs. I'm a published songwriter and everything, but oh God, doing a score like that was, I don't know how people do that. It's a fun episode. I really like the episode. But that whole season was just tough, really tough.
Where do the ideas over? I mean, you're credited as the writer. Do people send you ideas as a cast contribute and say, "Hey, let's do this"? How does that work?
No, it all comes from my brain. The one thing I will say is that Sean, who plays Jesus, is, aside from being gorgeous, he's freaking hysterical. So, and he takes it so seriously. He was probably the most serious of the actors because he was having a regular acting career, doing stuff all the time. He's actually the lead character in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, I think.
Oh,
So you
damn.
can actually play as Jesus if you want to go play. In fact, we did an episode about that where Mr. Deity's ticked off that he's showing up in video games as somebody else.
I didn't get that.
Um,
I remember but I didn't know because I don't play those games, so I didn't know what you were talking about.
yeah, yeah. So he would always come in. I would send him the script, and he would take it very seriously. And he would always come in with suggestions for, oh, what if we did this? What if we did that? And they were always great. And I guarantee you that if you watch an episode with Jesus in it or Jesse, all the funniest lines were his. But I always said I don't care because I'm the writer credit. Everyone's going to think it's me, but
Yeah, right.
it's all him. He's so good.
All right,
He's
so
one of my favorite people.
I have to ask, what's with the constant? Is it Jesse? Is it Jesus thing?
Yeah, well, so in the Mr. Deity cosmography, Mr. Deity has turned off his all-knowingness.
Yeah.
Um, and that's actually based on something. If you know your Rabbi Harold Kushner, who wrote a very popular book back in I want to say the 70s called "When Bad Things Happen to Good People." He had a son with progeria and slowly watched his son. I mean, he was like an old man by the time he was 10 years old, and very difficult, horrible. I've met him and had a good amount of conversation with him when I was working with Dennis. Very sweet man, very wise. And but he wrote a book explaining that God basically chose to turn off his all powerfulness, and that's why the bad things happen to us and all that kind of stuff. So, in thinking about it, I thought, there's no way Mr. Deity would turn off his all powerfulness. He's too much of a narcissist. But I can definitely see him. You got to get one of the three: all powerful,
Right.
all loving, all knowing. You got to get one of the three out of there to make it work anyway. So I had him turn off his all knowingness, which drops his IQ, like 100 points. But on top of everything else, it's like the whole memory thing is, you don't use it, you lose it. So he didn't have he had an infinite amount of time where he wasn't using his memory because he just had all knowingness. And now he has to try to use his memory, but he can't remember things. So he can't remember, he's always messing up words. He can't remember Jesus's name. Somehow he's got it stuck in his head that his name is Jesse, and it's just a constant thing. In fact, one of my favorite scenes ever is in that episode where I'm on him about a Call of Duty because I've been playing and I didn't realize it was him. And he says, "Who did you think it was?" I don't know, but he was very familiar. Somebody, and Mr. D or Sean says, "Jesus." Yes, yes, that's the guy. And he's not even right then. He's not realizing that he's talking to Jesus. And Sean's face is so sad. He's such a great actor. He becomes so sad and then infuriated almost instantly. It's one of my favorite little clips in all of the episodes.
So how were the other actors decided on?
Well, Jimbo was just already in right from the beginning, and Sean is such a good friend of mine. Anything I do, I want to do with Sean. He was in my first movie. That's how we met. So my only movie, I should say. And I thought he would be great for Jesus. We had to shoot his episode twice because he couldn't get the character. He couldn't wrap his mind around the character. And he told me later, he said, "You gave me one bit of direction that locked it in for me." And that was, I said to him, "Think about it this way. You're not my first choice. I've been through 15 other guys who didn't want to do it. Now we're down to you. I've heard from, Bob in the mailroom that you might be interested in something like this." And that clicked for him,
But
and
the
he just
do
got the
it,
character.
the do it included going down to be crucified.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
So,
that's a big ask.
which he's always resistant to in the whole
Right.
series. He's always trying to get out of that somehow. Um,
Wonder why.
and then Amy and I had been friends for 18 years. She had been in everything I'd ever done. Um, she's a terrific actress. So I was actually originally thinking of a man for Lucifer and still calling him Lucy as kind of like a dig. And then my friend suggested, "Oh, you should do Amy." And I asked, and she wanted to do it, and that was great. And it was during the course of our making those first episodes that we fell in love, and we ended up getting married and then divorced later on. But yeah, she's an amazing actress, and her she's probably one of the best reactors I have ever seen. I mean, so much of our episodes together are me cutting to her reactions
Yeah.
because her reactions are just priceless.
Like what a dimwit. He can't. How is he God?
Yes, yes. She's trying
Basically.
to be tolerant. I love the dynamic of this guy who has a lot of power, you know, and they all have to kind of work with him, but they all know it's God, he's just the dimmest bulb in the chandelier. There is an episode where Mr. Deity turns back on his all-knowingness, and Lucy tries to have a conversation with him, and it's impossible. And it's one of those things that I think about in terms of like you're going to have a relationship with God.
Right.
God knows everything
Right. He
you're
knows
ever going to
everything
say
she's
or
thinking.
do.
He knows everything she's
Yes.
going to say. I remember that
So
one.
she starts talking, and he already answers. He just cuts her off, and answers the question. And it would be so obnoxious to have a relationship with an all-knowing being. These ideas are so stupid if you actually think them through for 2 seconds.
So
Yeah.
you mentioned you had a relationship. You knew Amy Rowan for a long time. Then you got married. And you got divorced during the series. So
Yes, yes.
how did that affect things? I mean, in the show, you have this interesting relationship with Lucy. Mr. Deity has
Yeah,
this
yeah.
relationship with the devil, and it seems to be a love-hate thing. So, like, did your personal
Yeah,
relationship change what happened on screen?
well, that kind of worked out with us too. we we divorced in 2012, but we stayed together till 2014. Um, and then I moved to Burbank. But we continued to see each other right to 2018. We couldn't let it go. I've since learned about attachment theory, and we I think we had a classic anxious avoidant attachment syndrome, which is a whole interesting thing in and of itself. But I adore her. I still adore her. She's just she's a great person. We just couldn't we just couldn't put it together. And like I said, we've been friends for over 30 years, and we still I just called her on her birthday a couple days ago, and we chatted for 15, 20 minutes and
So, do you
everything.
think
We still
so?
have dogs in common. So has to take we have dogs in common still.
Like sharing
Yeah.
custody of children.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So, did it affect what you were writing for the role of Lucy as your relationship was changing?
No, not really. No, that was always totally separate. I did start using her more. There's a lot with Lucy in the later seasons because Sean became available. Jimbo moved across the country. That's why we got rid of him in season 5. I think Mr.
That's
Deity
why he
sends
was
him to
only
find.
like on a Zoom call or whatever technology
Yes.
the deity
Yes.
was using. Yes. Okay.
Yes. Jimbo has his own has his he does video production too, so we could shoot where he would just shoot his side at his home and then send me the footage, and we put stuff together like
Okay.
that. Yeah.
That makes sense. All right. So I want to ask you about one specific episode where you did one of your post-show segments on, and I'm not sure you were not joking about what happened or that was the truth. Mr. D and the woman. So, right, this is the creation of Eve, and a little bit the meaning. And in the next episode, maybe the one after that, you did an
Yes.
apology letter. Did you really get bad responses to that episode, or were you kind of just playing along for that?
I got terrible responses from that episode. People hated me for that episode. They thought it was just misogynistic and sexist and all of that stuff. And I was trying to take the biblical thing, which is indeed, the whole all of the Bible is misogynistic and sexist, and run with it. And we had trafficked in all kinds of stereotypes based on the Bible stuff, until then. And this was just a shocker to me that it was taken so badly. Um, I mean, I get it now. I can see it, but I also, humor is a little bit. I think a little more. You got to just give a little more leeway for humor, especially if it's based on something that is misogynistic and sexist, and you're gonna kind of run with that theme. Um, and Mr. Deity is certainly a sexist and a misogynist pig, and so it was just kind of weird to me that. But I've avoided. Trust me, I've avoided. Yeah, I did a non-apology, uh, which I thought was kind of funny. It was almost like a hostage video because that's how I felt. That's how I felt at the time. It was like, oh man, God, and there was a lot of stuff going on too at that time that was absolutely legitimate within the community. I was actually at TAM when in the room where a friend of ours got like I don't want to say molested, but touched inappropriately, and I had to be part of the investigation and all of that. So I knew this, this stuff goes on. It's not unwarranted. I just didn't think the episode was necessarily uh, as vile as some people thought it was. There's a little bit of vileness to it, I admit, but the vileness is about the character and all of their stuff. The actress who did it was in a film that I actually shot. I was DP on that film, and she's such a great actress, and I knew she'd be great. She plays Eve, and I think she was terrific. She was amazing. And we just ran with it, and she was certainly a she was no barefoot and pregnant type of woman. She was very progressive, and I thought if she had problems with it, she would have said something. So it just kind of hit me by surprise. And so I mean, we've had other episodes where I've gotten into a little bit of trouble, but that was also a follow-up to Mr. Deity and the Man, where we're trying to convince Adam to take a helpmeet. And he doesn't understand why he needs a helpmeet.
Yeah,
And we're
help
trying
help
to
meet, by the way. I didn't get that. Help meaty. I remember that word from
It's in the Bible. It's in
oh,
the Bible.
help
In the
meet,
King
not
James
help me.
Version, it's called a helpmeet. Yeah.
Is that an ancient word that means something specific?
Yeah, apparently, yeah. It's like from what I remember, it's like two sides, parts of a tennis ball coming together and
Oh,
forming the whole.
meeting. Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, helpmeet. So I think that's what it's called, Mr. Deity and the helpmeet, if I remember correctly.
Okay, so let me ask you, are there other portrayals of the deity that you've liked or not liked?
I
Uh,
haven't re I haven't really seen a lot of the others. I know Steve Buscemi did a
yes,
show
I was going to ask you,
that
Miracle Workers.
everyone wrote me saying they've ripped off Mr. Deity, they've
Yes,
ripped off Mr. Deity, and I never watched it. I never saw it. I never took a look.
definitely
Yeah, I don't have.
worth it. He is kind of a 60s hippie-ish, and I think he's a little meaner than Mr. Deity is because if I'm not remembering this wrong, he zaps people who work for him for no reason into nothingness. But
Yeah,
he's also just an idiot.
yeah. To me, I wanted to keep the character, even though he's awful. There's a lovability
Yeah,
to him, or
absolutely.
I've tried to keep him like that. Like you feel like you could talk to him and reason with him a little bit and get him to
And try to
see.
put some sense in his head, maybe even.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Lucy and Larry and everybody tries to do that. By the way, I always saw the show as Larry being the heart of the show, Lucy being the head, and of course Jesus being the body with that gorgeous
well, also
physique of his.
body of Christ. So
Yes,
yeah,
exactly,
yeah, there you go.
exactly. Works on multiple levels.
And then the other one is Dark Matter 2525. Do you know that YouTube channel?
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so the
yeah,
God and Jeffrey skits, I often
yeah.
think like Jeffrey is like everyone else kind of in your world besides Mr. Deity, and that God is just like you, where he's
Right,
like,
right,
and it's also
right.
done in a similar vein to Mr. Deity in regards to, did something happen? Did it not happen? Was it the organic model or was this a myth? And,
Right.
they're not always clear on that.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's more fun if you're not.
Yeah.
If you can keep playing with it. I mean, we obviously lay down the law in season 4. It's an organic universe, but there's so much. The Bible is. I always go back to the source material. I really do. I always say like the character is the character from the Bible, because the character from the Bible is not bright. He's just not bright. He's not decent. He's all of the things that Dawkins says in that, he's the most awful character in all of history, whatever. I can't remember the
In all of
quote.
fiction, in all of fiction.
Yeah, in all of fiction.
Yeah.
And and so I try to play him like that with hopefully a kind of there's an underlying sweetness just
Yeah.
based on the dimness of him.
Right. He's not quite
Um,
as awful as the God of the Bible. You can't see him, yeah,
right,
let's just slaughter the whole earth right now. I just
right,
can't see him doing that.
right, right. Although there is one episode where we're talking about the conquest, and I'm excited about holding the sun in the sky so they can.
Yeah.
I
Right.
mean, there are awful moments, but even in the awful moments, it's kind of there's a fun to it, which is when I think about it, it's like how do I pull that off? But somehow it works. It's a
It
strange.
does.
And Larry's the one who's just upset about everything that's going on,
Yeah.
and he's trying to talk me out of all of it. And
Right. What are they going to think of you if you do this? Right.
yeah,
So
yeah.
what are your thoughts on the multiple approaches possible to get through to theists? Where does satire, mocking religion fit in? Does it always work?
I say you got to have every possible approach. If you can make someone laugh at something they believe by pointing out how silly it is and they're laughing, laughing is an involuntary response. So it's you've just now realized, that is kind of funny and silly, and I believe that. And it's hard to laugh at something and just dismiss it out of hand. So I do think there's a component of humor and satire that's very, very powerful. Every approach to, just coming at you head on, like Hitchens and Dawkins did in the early days. I liked Sam's approach early on, which was a little more genteel and sophisticated.
Sam Harris.
Dan Dennett too. I thought his book was. I think Breaking the Spell is probably the best of the four books, and just in terms of trying to understand religion and where it comes from and how to deal with it and that kind of stuff. But Hitch, I mean, there's just no one better than Hitch. I could watch that stuff all day.
Yeah, your
But
episode in homage to him was great.
yeah, that was a fun one. That was a fun one. By the way, people gave me so much crap. I go out to get some liquor to appease him, and when I bring it back, it's not Johnny Walker Black.
Uh,
And they gave me such grief because they said everybody knows Hitch drank Johnny Walker Black, and I had to say to them, "Would Mr. Deity get that right? Come on, come on,
right.
put your thinking cap on. There's no way Mr. Deity would nail that." I specifically didn't get Johnny Walker Black for that shot because it's like, come on, there's no way.
All right. So speaking of a lot of different approaches, let's go into your other series. So
Yeah.
in parallel with Mr. Deity, you've been doing other web series, not skits per se, but more serious on
Right.
atheism, humanist topics. Um, these are the series I'm aware of. I'll name them, and I'd like you to give me an elevator speech describing each one for people who are unaware. Okay, so
Okay.
Words.
Yeah, Words is it. So there was a year there where Sony kept us off both platforms because they were trying to figure out what we wanted to do for a third season, and I felt like we got to get on and do something. And so I started writing this show called Words, which was kind of a behind the scenes of behind the scenes show of Mr. Deity, where we're all playing ourselves, but we're playing kind of awful versions. Well, I'm playing an awful version of myself. And we just started doing that because we didn't have anything else to do and we wanted to get back on YouTube and give something people to laugh at. So that's kind of all that was. It didn't have any traction, and we I think there's only 7 episodes. Yeah.
So the big one, which actually has over double of Mr. Deity's, is The Way of the Mister, which is 270, if I'm not mistaken, at this point. What's that series about?
So The Way of the Mister, I started. Kirk Cameron and Ray Comfort started a series called The Way of the Master, and I thought they were videos just talking about doing apologetics and kind of stuff, and so I thought, oh, I should do The Way of the Mister. And so we did a first episode, which was a pretty big production. It was shot like a 60 minutes episode where I play a therapist who's come up with this idea that everyone should be bisexual.
I saw that one.
And that he helps people become bisexual. And it was a real play on what was big at the time, which was, trying to turn homosexuals straight.
The conversion
And
therapy.
yeah, and I thought it would be fun to try to get heterosexuals and homosexuals turned into bisexuals, because it's the same thing. It's the same stupid idea. But we had a fun time with that. Sean plays the 60 Minutes interviewer guy, and I play this creepy doctor. And then we just started doing more of those, and somehow it morphed into me talking to camera with little funny pop-ups. And I've really liked that format for a long time. I still enjoy. I enjoy doing those. it's fun. I write the piece and I shoot it, and I don't have the pop-ups in mind. So the very last part of me finishing those is kind of watching them. And part of it is like me heckling myself or mocking myself. And some of it is actually adding comments that hit just a little harder than what I'm saying, or make it just a funny point.
Sometimes make a joke. It's like an interesting juxtaposition. Generally, you're on point, talking very seriously, and then something
Yes,
funny pops up.
yes. That I would say that's 80% of it, and then 20% of it is where I'm actually doing some kind of performance that's very mocking or sometimes silly, or something like that.
So what's the general theme of The Way of the Mister?
I would say counter apologetics. It's a lot of looking at um, the claims made. I watch a lot. I watch. This is where I say I make so much more of a sacrifice than Jesus did. He was down for 36 hours. I have to watch these horrible videos by these pastors, endlessly. Uh, I put in the hard work. Shoot, lay me down for 36 hours. I'll take that. Um, and it's just a lot of that. I get a lot of content also from watching other YouTube atheists who are taking on people who they might have one take on it, and then I have another. I had one this month that'll be coming out this month from Apologia, who looked at a video, and I thought, oh, there's something there there's something here that he really missed, and I went in and I just deep dived into that one thing. I watched a Pine Creek episode yesterday. Got three ideas out of it, because his videos are long. He does these live streams that are sometimes 3 hours, 4 hours long, and I love his approach. I think he's kind of brilliant in terms of his street epistemology approach to converting people. There's actually another kid that I listen. There's three kids that I really like a lot coming out. These young guys. Um, Nathan Orman, who has a channel called Digital Gnosis, James Fedor, and Majesty of Reason, which is Joe Schmidt. They're young guys. I can't remember if they have PhDs or masters in philosophy, and they really know this stuff, and they take on counter apologetics very seriously. But my favorite thing that I learned just recently is that Nathan Orman, who I like a lot, he's a British kid, very smart, on the autistic scale, but just brilliant and funny and all of that stuff. He actually was a Christian who came on Pine Creek's show and got deconstructed. He deconstructed after talking with Doug, and I'm like, okay, that's impressive, because this guy's sharp. This guy's really sharp, and he was this Jordan Peterson following Christian guy who came on with Doug, and a couple months later, he's an atheist, and just that alone, I'm like, wow, okay. And I think that ultimately that's why all of us do that, is we want to help people find their way out of this mess, because a lot of us, Doug was religious, I was deeply religious. I know the harm that can be done, both individually and in society, by these silly ideas. So when you can turn someone, probably the best emails I get or comments in the thing is you and Aaron Ra or whomever really helped me change my mind about this stuff. I've had two Mormon kids write me over the years, both of whom told me that they were on the verge of suicide because they lived in Utah and they were gay, and it was they just didn't want to go on anymore, and they somehow found the show and started watching, and looked at my Mormon episodes, and took off.
All right, so let's see. The next one that I came across regarding number of episodes, 47, I believe, is Prager FU, and you've discussed Dennis Prager before, and now you're making
Yes,
episodes contrary to his beliefs.
yes, because he's lost his mind. If he ever had one, I guess. I think he was a fairly rational, decent human being back when I knew him. I hope so. But he has gone absolutely off the deep end. They got a whole ton of money from some oil people to make these videos, and they're pumping them out. And I'm not doing hardly any damage with these things because they get millions and millions of views with these videos, and it's horrific. And now I just post them hoping that at some point someone can find mine and at least be turned away. But their videos are very easy to poke fun at. They're even when Prager's in a video, it's like, really? I mean, this is the stuff that he hasn't. There's been no progress in his thought process. I mean, I met him in '88, I want to say, and there's just no movement whatsoever on some of these topics, particularly regarding religion. I don't do a lot of the political stuff. I will do every now and then when they get crazy. I've done some that they've done some stuff on race that is absolutely mind-bogglingly horrible and awful, and just, I'll say it outright, racist stuff. One that they took down themselves. They took their own video down they made like this tribute video to Robert E. Lee, and where they said just the most horrific stuff. Not even horrific. Some of it's just stupid. It's just absolutely stupid about why we should be honoring Robert E. Lee. What? What?
The other series, next on my list, 32 episodes, Mr. D Goes to Washington.
Yes, another big mistake on my part because, atheists, we all agree on the God thing, but outside of the God thing, there is it is herding cats. There's just we're all rambling and we all are very individualistic and we do our own thing. And politically, there's no through line. Nor do I think there should be. I mean, it is about one question: is there a God or not? No. Okay, so that doesn't imply anything else. And I started making these because I just felt like I had to say something right around 2016. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't keep quiet, and lost a lot more, subscribers and people like that. So, but I just felt like I couldn't not say something. It's just so
Well,
much
has that
awfulness going on.
series ended?
It's not ended, but I do them rarely. That there was one, I think it was, I can't remember if I did it as part of the Mr. Deity Goes to Washington. There's a couple episodes on luck that just absolutely blew my mind in terms of the resistance. Because I do believe, in fact, in season 2 of Mr. Deity says luck is the guiding force of the universe. And I believe that. I believe that deeply. And I did a couple episodes on it, and I was so blown away by the resistance to the idea that luck has such a powerful effect on our lives, and that we're all so subject to it. And because the corollary is, if you don't believe that, what you believe is really the universe is a just place where everyone gets what they deserve. And that's so obviously a stupid idea. I can't even fathom how anyone can go there, but that was one of those that really blew my mind. And that idea does inform a lot of my politics and what I think about how we should treat other human beings on the planet in a political sense.
All right, and the next one is The God Distraction, which I recently found, and I love those.
Yes, I have to finish that. They're hard. They're hard to make because they're long, and they were going to turn into a book, and eventually they might still. I've had an offer. I just haven't had the time to be able to put it together. I thought they were going to. I gave them all the materials, and I said I'll have more, and I thought they were going to edit, and they wanted me to edit, and then it turned into a nightmare for me because they wanted me to add a whole bunch of the material from the other shows that fit in with a given chapter and whatnot. And then it got too bloated, and then they needed me to cut it back down. And it was like, oh, I just don't have time for this right now.
So tangentially, since you mentioned book, you are an author, and tell me about the one book you've published.
I just had the one little Amazon short, and it was based on a 20-minute video that I did called Atheist Fundamentalist, where I compare. It's basically a comparison okay, well, here's what an atheist fundamentalist would be, comparing it to a religious fundamentalist. Since we don't really have any books advocating violence towards those who disagree with us and all of that kind of stuff, atheist fundamentalism is a very docile thing. I mean, they fly planes into buildings. We write essays and books, and and oh, the horror, of an atheist fundamentalist. And there were some people at the time, Reza Aslan, and what's her name, the historian, I can't remember, who were writing stuff that I was kind of responding to at the time. And it's just a short little thing, but I think it's good. It's one of my favorite things that I've ever done. It took me, I can't remember how many weeks to shoot the thing. Each little paragraph is in its own separate. Not everyone is in a different thing. I shot some of them at the same place and then pieced them together and everything. But it was a long project for me, and it's probably the most concise primer on my thinking about religion and the dangers thereof.
So wait, are we talking about atheist fundamentalist or the God distraction at that point?
That's atheist fundamentalist. The
Okay.
God distraction never came out as a book.
Okay.
It's never
So that's the
come out
one
of a
that
book.
you were talking about, that perhaps it was going
Yeah.
towards that.
And I think I have 3 more chapters to shoot, but it's been a long time because, like I said, they're long, they're involved. I shoot them on a motorized dolly, which is a pain in the what, and they have a different look to them, and all of that kind of stuff. But that's my magnum opus on something I call apatheism, which is what I call myself. I'm an apatheist. I don't care if God exists, because there's simply no way to know anything about his existence, his will, or his character. So who cares? Why should we care? And the religious have kind of made it that way with the supernatural. The supernatural means nothing is falsifiable or predictable. We can't make predictions based on anything we claim to know. And we can't even know anything, because if all things are possible, then whatever we think we know could just be a trick by God.
Or Satan. How do you know
Or
that
Satan,
Satan
or
or
Satan.
some
Yes.
other ethereal and enemy of mankind didn't resurrect Jesus to cause problems in the world? He wrote the Bible. He wrote the Quran. How do you
Right.
know that's not true?
And in fact, every religion believes that every other religion has been duped in such a way. So
Very good point.
it's not only a possibility, it's a certitude in terms of their thinking. So the question then is, how do you know you're not the one that's been duped by Satan? And of course, they can't possibly consider that. But there's just a total dearth of knowledge in 3,000 years. There is literally nothing that we know with any certainty about God, his will, his character, anything more than the shepherds in the fields knew, who were coming up with this nonsense. But if we look at the things that we can know, we can freaking land a probe on a comet, that's how many millions of miles away, or we can actually run one into them and knock them off. I mean, there's so much advanced stuff that we can do if we focus on the stuff that we can know, that has changed the world and made the world just such a better place. And it's my argument against theism, is that there's just nothing to know. You can't know anything about God. So who cares? And there is a thread within the Bible itself where God is just a bit of a trickster, from Abraham to Job.
So, yeah.
He'll mess with us.
Okay, so let's wrap it up here. Thanks so much for being here today. I might even say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
I'm me. Thanks for watching.